Ethan Wallace thought his power and privilege made him untouchable. But when he falsely accused a black attorney of theft, everything he built began to collapse. What followed would destroy his reputation and expose the dark truth behind his actions. But let's start from the beginning. Ethan Wallace, a wealthy owner of a chain of fitness clubs, strode confidently into a trendy downtown cafe, his polished leather shoes clicking on the tiled floor. The cafe buzzed with energy. Young professionals tapping on laptops, baristas shouting out orders. But Ethan saw none of it. His mind was already focused on his next deal, his next move, his next conquest. That was how Ethan viewed life, a series of transactions where he always came out on top. Tall and broad-shouldered, Ethan exuded the air of a man who believed he earned his place through sheer determination. To him, success was black and white, winners and losers, hard workers and freeloaders. Anyone who didn't fit his mold was, in his eyes, part of the problem. At a corner table, Jason Miller sat quietly, sipping his coffee as he reviewed legal documents on his laptop. His tailored navy suit and leather briefcase spoke of professionalism and success. Jason, a renowned civil rights attorney, had built his career advocating for marginalized communities in cases of workplace discrimination. Calm and composed, he exuded quiet confidence. Ethan noticed Jason almost immediately, and irritation flared. His biases surged before reason could intervene. "Must be one of those diversity hires," Ethan muttered, standing in line for his order, eyes lingering on Jason with disdain. He didn't know the man, but that didn't matter. Ethan's world was divided by assumptions and prejudices. With his order in hand, Ethan couldn't resist. Approaching Jason's table, he smirked smugly. "Hey, shouldn't you be working in a warehouse or something? You don't look like the lawyer type." Jason glanced up, unfazed by the blatant microaggression. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Ethan leaned closer, his voice dripping with condescension. "Bet you're just sitting here pretending to work, huh?" Jason's calm never wavered. "I'm actually working on a case about racial discrimination. Coincidence?" Ethan's smug grin faltered. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. He reached into his pocket and froze. His wallet was gone. "Where's my wallet?" he demanded, patting his pockets, his eyes narrowing on Jason. "You took it, didn't you?" Jason stood slowly, his expression calm yet resolute. "You're accusing me of theft?" "Yeah, I am," Ethan snapped. "You're the only one sitting here." The cafe grew silent. All eyes turned to watch the escalating confrontation. Jason's voice remained steady. "I didn't take your wallet. Check the cameras if you want." But Ethan wasn't interested in logic. Pulling out his phone, he dialed 911. Within minutes, the flashing lights of a police cruiser illuminated the cafe's front window. The low hum of conversation inside fell silent as two officers stepped out of the car and made their way to the entrance. Ethan Wallace hurried to meet them, a look of exaggerated distress plastered across his face. "Officers, thank God you're here," he exclaimed, gesturing dramatically toward Jason. "That man stole my wallet." Jason remained seated at his table, his expression composed, but visibly frustrated. His hands rested calmly on the table, fingers steepled together, as if bracing himself for what was coming. He'd been through situations like this before. The officers approached with professional caution. "Sir," one of them said, addressing Jason, "do you mind stepping outside?" Jason rose slowly, keeping his movements deliberate and non-threatening. He raised his hands slightly in a peaceful gesture. "I'm not resisting," he said firmly. "But before we go any further, I suggest you check the security footage. It'll clear this up." Behind the officers, Ethan scoffed, his smugness undeterred. You don't need footage. I know what I saw. One officer exchanged a glance with his partner before turning to the cafe manager. Do you have security cameras? He asked. The manager nodded. Yes, we do. I'll pull it up right now. As the manager disappeared into the back room to review the footage, murmurs began to ripple through the cafe. Several patrons whispered among themselves, exchanging concerned glances. The tension was thick, a palpable mix of curiosity and discomfort. Near the corner of the cafe, a young woman named Sophia discreetly pulled out her phone and began recording. Her fingers flew over the screen as she uploaded the video to social media with the caption, "Racist businessman accuses black attorney of theft without evidence. Watch what happens next." Moments later, the manager returned, shaking his head. The wallet wasn't stolen, he said firmly. Ethan, you left it at the register when you paid. A hush fell over the cafe as Ethan's face turned bright red. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Well, it's an easy mistake to make, he stammered, his bravado crumbling. Jason crossed his arms, his voice steady and unyielding. An easy mistake? You falsely accused me of theft and wasted police resources. One officer turned to Ethan, his expression stern. Sir, you wasted our time. Making false reports is a serious offense. Ethan's smugness melted into humiliation as cafe patrons whispered and phones recorded every second of his disgrace. By the time Ethan Wallace stepped out of the cafe, a storm was brewing online. The video of his confrontation with Jason Miller had already spread like wildfire. Phones buzzed with notifications as thousands of people shared, liked, and commented on the clip. What started as a tense moment inside a small cafe was now a full-blown scandal, and Ethan had no idea his life was about to unravel. Back at his sleek, modern office, Ethan's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Calls, texts, emails, all pouring in faster than he could keep up. He rubbed his temples in frustration, thinking it was just another busy day of managing his fitness empire. But when his assistant, Emily, walked in, her anxious expression told a different story. You should see this, she said, holding out her phone with trembling hands. On the screen, the video played, clear as day. Ethan's smug face, his condescending tone, and his false accusation against Jason were all captured in painfully high definition. Ethan watched in horror as the video looped, each replay sinking him deeper into dread. Below the video, thousands of comments scrolled rapidly. This is what racism looks like in 2025. Cancel his business. People like this shouldn't be running companies. I wonder how many times he's done this without cameras around. Ethan's face grew pale as he scrolled through the flood of outrage. His phone buzzed again, a message from one of his biggest investors. We need to talk, immediately. The fallout came swiftly. Several of Ethan's business partners issued public statements distancing themselves from him, denouncing his behavior. Longtime clients canceled their memberships, and his company's social media accounts were flooded with demands for accountability. His once flourishing empire was crumbling before his eyes. Meanwhile, across town, Jason Miller sat quietly in his office when his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number from a major news outlet. Mr. Miller, the journalist began, would you be willing to share your side of the story? Jason hesitated. He wasn't one to seek attention. But this incident wasn't just about him. After a moment, he spoke. I'll do it. People need to know this isn't just one man's mistake. It's a system that's been broken for far too long. A week later, Ethan held a press conference hoping to salvage his reputation. I'm deeply sorry for the misunderstanding, he said, sweating under the bright lights. I made a mistake, and I've learned from it. But the public wasn't buying it. Jason, meanwhile, had become a symbol of perseverance and dignity in the face of injustice. He used his newfound platform to speak out about racial profiling and systemic racism in everyday life. One evening, Jason received a call from a former client. "Jason, did you hear? Ethan's company is filing for bankruptcy. He lost everything." Jason sighed. "I'm not surprised. Actions have consequences." The next day, Jason walked into the cafe where it all started. The staff greeted him warmly, and Sophia, the woman who posted the viral video, approached him. "Mr. Miller, I'm sorry you had to go through that. Thank you for standing up." Jason smiled. "We all have a role to play. Thank you for posting the video." As Jason left the cafe, he couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. Change was slow, but it was happening, and people like Ethan Wallace were finally being held accountable.